Hello, welcome into Fantasy Baseball today, and welcome to February. I am Frank Stampfl, joined by Scott White and Chris Towers. It is strategy week. So today on the show, we are talking head-to-head strategy, both for points and categories, but we also have some news from the weekend. Welcome back, not to Arizona, but to Cincinnati. Eugenio Suarez. That is very fun. Scott, look at you settling into the new place. Congratulations, my friend.
Yes, the Airbnb is gone. Spent the weekend moving again, more permanently this time. And as you can see, spent a lot of time setting up the place. I'm just kidding. It looks like I'm in a hostage video because there's literally nothing behind me. I'm in a corner. I don't know if you can tell.
I think it looks fine. I think you holding today's newspaper is a great look. I think it's a great setup.
Yeah. Just like a hostage video. I gotcha. It's a work in progress, the setup here. It's a work in progress, but at least I got my fancy CBS issued microphone back. I got my 2-monitor setup. Oh, yeah. So I can actually look up things while I'm talking or when I'm writing. That's, my productivity is going to go through the roof with that, or at least get back to status quo with that. And I'm very excited. Very excited to be in the new digs. And if you want to know where I am, the T-shirt drops a little hint.
He's on Greenville Drive.
Yes, no? the closest professional baseball team to me is the Red Sox High A affiliate.
I didn't want to say anything in case that was Scott's actual street, and he's like, I don't know. I don't want people to know where I live.
The team is called the Greenville Drive. That's the joke.
Yeah, yes. Yeah. Red Sox High A, right? I think that's what we're working with there. So some minor league scouting coming soon to Scott White. Let's go. Let's begin with the news, and we will start with Eugenio Suarez. That was a choo-choo train. That is I don't know. It's supposed to be like an ADP train. It's just like rising up.
Oh, okay.
It didn't sound very good. Whatever. It is what it is. Anyway, Suarez back to the Reds on a 1-year, $15 million deal. That includes a $16 million option for 2027. Honestly, did not think Suarez would have to settle for a 1-year deal with an option, but here we are. And I'm happy that he did, based on the landing spot. Oh, my God. Going from the worst hitting environment in baseball to one of the best. This is an awesome landing spot for Suarez. Jeff Passan said the plan is for him to mostly play DH. More on that in a bit. We do kind of have to sort out the Reds and figure out where everyone's playing here. But, Scott, this is an awesome landing spot for Suarez.
I mean, I was just hoping he didn't end up back in Seattle. Because now we've seen him there twice. He's tried twice in Seattle, which is not a very hitter-friendly place to begin with, but it gives some hitters in particular trouble, the batting eye there, and Suarez seems to fit in that category, given that in 2 separate stints there, he seemed to be held back by it. But it was looking more and more likely that he would wind up in Seattle, particularly after the Diamondbacks traded for Nolan Arenado. Turns out he went back to another former club, Cincinnati, and that is the place where he hit 49 home runs in 2019. So we already have proof of concept there. It's very encouraging what he could do there. It's obviously a great environment, but really just getting and staying out of Seattle was enough for me to consider him a top. I think I'm 6th at third base. Very high end at the position despite his age. And, good landing spot for him. There are some trickle-down effects that make it less exciting. I don't know if you want to get into those now. I think Chris has some things he wants to say about Suarez first.
Yeah, we'll get to some of the moving pieces here with Cincinnati. Chris, how much did you move up Eugenio Suarez? I guess more so in the overall rankings because, third base is pretty jumbled up. Like, maybe you moved him up ahead of Bregman or something like that. But how much did you move Suarez up in the overall rankings?
Yeah, I already had him at 8. And I think 6 makes sense. And I could be talked into 5. So I have Austin Riley at 5, Maikel Garcia at 6 before this. Riley in the overall was 79th. Maikel Garcia was 89th. I think just right in between those two guys, I think you can make a case for Maikel Garcia ahead of him. I think you can make a case for Eugenio Suarez ahead of Austin Riley. But I'll go with that order for now. It is pretty close to the best case scenario landing spot for Eugenio Suarez, if not the single best. And if you look at the home runs by park on StatCast, based on the park factors, or based on the actual batted balls he hit, this is not an estimate. For his career, he would have had 346 home runs at Cincinnati. If you take the median team, which is San Diego, the median is 269. So that is what, 75 more home runs over his career, about 20% more in Cincinnati versus the median ballpark. I still think he is a extremely high variance player. I don't want that to get lost in him landing in Cincinnati. It's a great park to hit in. We have seen him hit extremely well there. His final 4 seasons in Cincinnati, he averaged 42 homers per 162 games, to hit 247 with an 842 OPS, 104 RBI. It should be a pretty good lineup, potentially a good one. If some of these young guys take a step forward, it's just, I've been waiting on some young guys to take a step forward in Cincinnati for a while, but you can't really ask for a better landing spot. Maybe Colorado, but they were never going to sign him. Maybe Sacramento, they were never going to sign him either. So in terms of realistic landing spots, this is a great one for Suarez. I think he's one of the best power bats in the game and should be a top, probably 85 pick, top 90 pick. So first 7 rounds.
I go higher than that, given how scarce third base is.
Yeah. I'm looking at your overall rankings in Roto category league, Scott. You have Suarez at 59th overall. I had him outside of my top 100 before this, just because kind of guarding against him going back to Seattle. We were all pretty worried about that possibility. After this, I moved him up to 77th in Roto. You could argue he could be a little bit higher than that, but the ADP was right at 119 the past 2 weeks. I think he moves up inside the top 80, like a top 70 to 80 pick, somewhere in that range for Suarez moving forward. And if you like him more, just go ahead and draft him where Scott has him ranked. How does everything else fit for the Reds here? So Suarez is at DH. Brian Hayes will start at third base. Does he remain there all year? He's still a great defender, but obviously is not good offensively. Maybe they can get a little bit more out of him in that ballpark. My guess is Spencer Steer goes to left field, Sal Stewart at first base. At least that's what I hope, because I really like Sal Stewart. But JJ Bleday signed there in the offseason. It was only a $1.4 million deal, and he has an option left. So, Scott, they can find ways to make this work if they want to get Stewart and Steer and Suarez and Hayes all in the lineup together.
Yeah, they can. I just don't know how motivated Terry Francona is going to be. And this is me, just being fearful. This isn't necessarily me saying what I expect to happen. This is just me being a worrywart, to be clear. When Sal Stewart first came up last September, he homered 4 times in 10 games, and then Terry Francona stopped playing him, even though the Reds were fighting for a playoff spot. There was a lot of Will Benson. There was a lot of Gavin Lux. Gavin Lux is gone now. So that seemed like it cleared a spot for Stewart. But now with Eugenio Suarez in the fold, it's a bit crowded again. Now, I don't personally think Brian Hayes deserves everyday at bats at third base, or JJ Bleday deserves everyday at bats in left field. That certainly is the Reds' best defensive alignment, and that may be what Terry Francona defaults to. But I guess it's partly up to Sal Stewart. I don't know. 4 home runs in 10 games would seem to say he deserves to play every day, but that's not how it went in September. So that just has me a little bit worried about our boy Sal Stewart.
This is just one that I think if there's a dip in the price, I'll take it for Sal Stewart, because I think he's probably their third best hitter.
I mean, he's already so cheap.
Yeah.
Outside the top 280p for Sal.
I just, even if he doesn't start the season with an everyday job, I think he's going to have one eventually. I think worst case scenario, you'll have to be a little patient with Sal Stewart, but I just have a really hard time imagining a world where Sal Stewart hits like we think he could, and they're really playing JJ Bleday every day over him, or they're really playing even Spencer Steer. And the nice thing is Stewart has some positional flexibility. He can play second, he can play third, he can play first. Steer has positional flexibility. He can play the outfield, he can play first base. I think it'll work itself out. So I'm not going to proactively move Sal Stewart down. I think he's too talented to get buried on a team that has some talent, but we're not talking about the Dodgers here. There should be a world where Sal Stewart plays 135 plus games. It's just they might be a little backloaded. Maybe he starts 15 games in January. And there's some risk here for sure.
You mean in April? If he plays in January, that would be weird.
April. Yeah.
You have to go back in time at this point.
April. All right.
I agree. I think if Sal Stewart hits anywhere close to what we're expecting, this will sort itself out just fine. So definitely a situation to pay attention to during spring training, but I think eventually he will have a job with the Reds, hopefully early on in the season. Let's get into the Giants, who signed Luis Arraez to a 1-year, $12 million deal. The idea is for Arraez to be the team's everyday second baseman, where he has been pretty awful defensively. So they upgraded the outfield defense with Harrison Bader, and now bringing the infield defense down with Luis Arraez. Not exactly what you want to see with a pitching staff that has Logan Webb and Adrian Hauser and other.
They've got a really good defense around him, though.
I mean, the left side of their infield is amazing.
Yeah.
The right side, I mean, if Devers is playing first base.
I think Devers is probably not a difference-making first baseman either way. I think he's probably okay. I think they can live with it. I don't really get the signing. Luis Arraez just isn't that good. But getting him on a 1-year deal, if he bounces back.
Casey Schmidt, right?
Probably.
They have been trying for a second baseman all offseason. They were linked to Brendan Donovan. They were recently linked to CJ Abrams, but apparently the asking price was high on Abrams. But
I was kind of.
This is a terrible landing spot. I mean,
not really.
I mean, at
not
least
really.
You're not going to get much power out of him anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
Oracle Park is the 6th best for singles, and because it's so big. They drop in, and obviously singles are Arraez's specialty. We don't really hope for much more from him than that. Last year interrupted a 3-year streak of batting titles for him. He hit only 292, but I would expect him to hit over 300 again, provided, there aren't some health issues that prevent that from happening. So I think for fantasy, this is good news. I was a little worried Arraez, just given his defensive shortcomings and this deep into the offseason, like who had a spot in their lineup for him still. I was a little worried he'd have to settle for some kind of reserve role. Like he'd be an excellent pinch hitter, which seems weird given that, he's just a year removed from 3 straight batting titles, but we know the story with him. That's really, it's hollow batting average. It's a lot of singles.
There's a reason he's the first player in MLB history to win a batting title on 3 separate teams.
But for fantasy, he's pretty interesting. Yeah. Roto leagues, it's really hard to fill batting average as late as he's going to be available, and he's as reliable of a source for that as you can find. And in points leagues, because he strikes out so infrequently, he's actually a viable starter, particularly at second base. And that's part of what makes this exciting in fantasy is Arraez is only first base eligible right now. But this means he's going to regain second base, and second base, there's much more need for him in fantasy. So I think it puts him back on the radar in a 12-team context.
Yeah. So last year, Luis Arraez had 21 total strikeouts. I mean, there are guys that do that in a week around baseball, let alone, a whole baseball season. That is insane. It is a 3% strikeout rate for Luis Arraez. Last year, 2.7 fantasy points per game on CBS. Not great, but again, at second base, I think it could, as to your point, Scott, it could turn out to be okay as like a low-end starter there in a points league. Any points leagues where you lose a full point for a strikeout, I believe that's on ESPN. Luis Arraez, gets a huge boost in a format like that. So definitely keep that in mind with him. For his ADP over the past 2 weeks, 289 over at the NFBC. Obviously, that number is going to go up quite a bit. Where would you guys slot Arraez into your second base rankings? I know he doesn't have that right now, but he should have it very early in the season. I was thinking around 17 in points leagues, which would be just ahead of McLean, Beatty, and Luis Garcia.
Yep.
And then in Roto, like 23rd-ish, which would be just ahead of like Chase Mydroth, Ernie Clement, and Jake Cronenworth.
Yeah, I think around 17 makes sense.
I think it's perfect. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. All right, let's get into the White Sox, who signed outfielder Austin Hayes to a 1-year, $6 million deal. He was solid in 103 games last year with the Reds, 266 batting average, 15 homers, 7 steals, and a 768 OPS. He crushes lefties. He's adequate, not so great against right-handed pitching, but Roster Resource has him in there as a starting right fielder. I would imagine that's how things start for him in the season, and we'll see where it goes from there. Any interest in Austin Hayes, I guess, is deeper league stuff here.
Not really. Head-to-head or AL only, sure. He's a decent hitter, but he really struggled to stay healthy last season. He fell apart after a really good start. He hasn't hit more than 16 homers in a season since 2021. I just don't think there's much here. He's I don't know, as your fifth outfielder in a 15-team league, there are probably worse options, but he's not a particularly exciting one.
Yeah, I agree. There was a much stronger case for him heading into last year. He was coming off a kidney infection that had affected his production, and he was going to Cincinnati.
Yep.
And White Sox is different, and obviously he didn't quite live up to our wildest hopes for him in Cincinnati. So I think Austin Hayes is safely out of the discussion for 12-team leagues.
Yeah. I like 20 homers, 80 RBI, 80 runs. I can see that. And that if he did that, he'd probably be a top 40 outfielder by the end of the season.
That's probably on his higher end range.
But it's a big park downgrade. You know, it's not a particularly exciting player.
The team has a lot of variance where, like, there is a scenario where things work out for the White Sox and Murakami becomes a big slugger and Colson Montgomery is,
sure,
takes another step forward. So, like, maybe their lineup could get a little bit better, but yeah, I think it's a very low end outcome here for Austin Hayes. Luis Angel Acuna, we wondered, maybe he'll have a starting job. It's still possible, I guess. Roster Resource has Brooks Baldwin in at center field, but that's probably a battle for spring, and maybe they just want to go with the younger player. Although I guess they're both pretty young, but they probably want to see what they have in Acuna at some point too. The White Sox are acquiring Jordan Hicks and minor league pitcher David Sandlin from the Red Sox in exchange for a lower-end pitching prospect, Gage Zeal, and a player to be named later. Jordan Hicks missed most of September due to shoulder tendonitis. I don't think any of these players matter, even in the deepest of fantasy leagues. The Athletics signed Jacob Wilson to a 7-year, $70 million contract extension on Friday. The deal includes a club option for 2033, and Wilson had a strong rookie season. He hit .311, 13 homers, 5 steals in 125 games. I think the A's strategy of extending their young players has been a pretty interesting one. They have Wilson, Soderstrom, Brent Rooker, although I guess Rooker's not young, but he's still a good player for them. And Lawrence Butler, they're all locked up for the foreseeable future. So good on them to get that done. We'll see what they can do with Nick Kurtz and Shea Langoliers. Non-transaction news, Shohei Ohtani is prepping for a full season as a two-way player, both pitcher and hitter, which we expected, though he will not pitch for Japan in the World Baseball Classic. Edgar Caro visited Driveline Baseball last week with the goal of increasing his bat speed and improving launch angle, so a name to watch here in spring training. Mariners pitcher Logan Evans underwent UCL reconstruction surgery with an internal brace and will miss the entire 2026 season. And I know this was news late last week, but we found out Blake Snell is coming along slowly this offseason in an effort to recover from the playoffs, which, as I pointed out on Friday, were 3 months ago. So what is he recovering from? I don't really understand, but how much, if at all, did you guys lower Snell in your rankings?
Well, it's weird because he's usually such a good bat for big volume and consistency. And
really good early in the season.
Yeah, you can always count on Blake Snell. So I don't think I think we have to move him down because this is such new information for me as a person who was born 3 days ago and knows a lot about baseball for some reason, but doesn't know about Blake Snell. and his history. If you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I haven't moved him down yet because I've been moving, but I will move him down a lot. I mean, this is the sort of thing that when you have a pitcher ranked high, you can't rank him high anymore. If his availability for the start of the season is in question, with or without the insinuation of an injury, and it's only an insinuation. I don't know if this is just the Dodgers luxuriating in their surplus of pitching. It's like, well, we can't. We have more than enough to fill out a rotation anyway, so let's just play it safe with Blake Snell because we can. And that's kind of the danger in investing in any Dodgers pitcher, except maybe Yamamoto. I'll put him as the exception, but Emmett Sheehan, Tyler Glasnow, I mean, they could do the same thing with him.
I've said it many times. You reach a point where this stops being true, but for any of their pitchers, but especially I think Blake Snell and Tyler Glasnow, if the Dodgers get 50 innings out of those two guys, but those innings happen to be in September and October, I think they're fine with that. They would happily take that outcome.
Yep, good way of putting it.
And that's kind of been the issue for these guys since they joined the Dodgers. It's just April through September doesn't matter for them.
Yeah.
Like that is not, like I said, it's not entirely true all the way because you do reach a point where you do need pitchers. And I don't know, like maybe River Ryan is good enough to get them to the postseason, but at some point you do need guys to make quality starts.
But they can work in Justin Wroblewski, Landon Knack.
Like, if they win 91 games instead of 101 games, that doesn't really change anything for the Dodgers.
I think it's more like 101 games instead of 111 games.
Sure. I mean, they only won 95 last year or something like that. They didn't run away. Like, that division was in play in September. They weren't running away with it.
Yeah.
93.
So,
yeah.
So it's not 100% true. Like, there could come a point where we're like, man, the Dodgers actually do need Blake Snell. It'd be nice if he was around. But I think the likeliest outcome is the Dodgers are just fine if Blake Snell has a bad season, but he's great in October.
Yeah.
So I can't move him. Like, he's in a weird spot in the rankings where I can't move him so far down. Like, I'm moving him down to 30.
You already have him so low. Have him so low to begin with.
But
where did you say you have him at starting pitcher? Sorry, I was talking over
30.
Yeah, I mean that's
might be
probably
too high.
about the range I'll move him into. If not,
I moved him down to 25, but it's one of those where SP 25 where I don't. It's just kind of a stay away. I mean, I guess if I truly don't want him, I have to rank him lower than that. But
he
kind of a stay away.
He was SP 18 in ADP before this. I don't know. I thought that price was crazy all along, but now it's going to go significantly down, and I would guess he's still a top 30 pitcher, which he has done twice in a 9-year career.
I mean, ranking him about how you'd rank. Well, I know you guys are lower on Spencer Strider as well, but just based on where the consensus has Strider,
it's not far from where I have Strider as well. He's 35 for me, so yeah.
Before we hit our first break, just some programming reminders. We are now up to 5 podcasts per week. We are here live right now on Sunday night going into Monday morning. We will have a mailbag on Friday, so send in your questions, fantasybaseball@cbsi.com. Drop a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and you can actually leave the review on Apple and drop a question there as well. We'll choose some of those for our mailbags. Make sure to subscribe to the FBT newsletter if you haven't already. Chris puts a lot of work into that. If you're watching on YouTube, scan the QR code that will take you right to the website where you can sign up for free. And make sure to like this video, subscribe on YouTube, turn on that notification bell. 40K by opening day. Help us get there. We will take that break.
By opening day. 40K
be back
by opening day.
right after this.
This isn't just combat. It's cinema.
Ready or not, here I come. Let's go! Are you not entertained?
The new home of UFC, Paramount Plus.
Welcome back in Fantasy Baseball today. All right, it is strategy week. Let's begin things with head-to-head, and we are looking at head-to-head points first here. Mostly everything in this section will be for weekly leagues. We will talk about some more daily stuff a little bit later on. I know we talk about Roto and category leagues a lot on this podcast. I apologize. I know a lot of people still play in head-to-head points leagues. Heck, the Scott White...
Head-to-head leagues are the future, baby.
That's one way to put it. Scott White Dynasty League is a head-to-head points league. My longest standing home league is head-to-head points as well. It's how I originally got into fantasy baseball. And for anybody who might be thinking about playing fantasy baseball for the first time, this is the format that you should play in. It's easily translatable. If you've played in fantasy football, you gain fantasy points based on what your players do on the field. It's easy as that. I've said this before, but I do wish that there was a standard point scoring system that we could use across just the fantasy baseball industry, much like it is in fantasy football. We have our own here at CBS, which I will reference in a second, but I know ESPN has their own scoring system, Yahoo has their own scoring system, and best ball leagues have a completely different scoring system as well. So it is kind of hard to talk about it collectively all the time because everyone's rules are different. But on CBS, at least for hitters, 1 point for each of a single walk, hit by pitch, run, and RBI, 2 for a double or a stolen base, 3 for a triple, 4 for a homer, and half a point for a hitter strikeout, -1 for a caught stealing. So we will stop there for a second.
Frank, I just want to say real quick.
Yes.
Like, I think it's also true that the majority of home leagues, to the degree they play categories, don't do the standard 5x5, just based on email questions we get. Oh, it's an 8x8. Oh, we use OBP instead of batting average. Like, the majority of our audience plays in home leagues, and the majority of home leagues are customized. So I don't know that there's any universal standard aside from points leagues either. You always have to tailor the advice to your specific format. And that, for head-to-head points, is probably my biggest just overarching guideline is, particularly if you're new to the format, if you're new to a league, like, really familiarize yourself with how the scoring works. Because as we've talked about a lot in recent weeks, -0.5 for a strikeout versus -1 for a strikeout, huge difference in how the player pool works. Stolen bases, if they're worth 2 points like is standard on CBS, or they're worth only 1, huge difference in how base stealers are valued. Pitchers, a lot of times it's -1 for it's plus a full point for a strikeout, or just plus half a point like on CBS for a strikeout. Huge difference. Innings is a big one. 3 points for a pitcher on CBS, but sometimes it's just 1 per inning. And that makes a huge difference. So, you really got to know. I know it sounds basic, but this is kind of just starting out in this format kind of podcast. So that would be the place to start, is really familiarizing yourself with the rules, looking at the sortable stats page, see who plays up because of it or plays down.
No, I think it's a really good point too. And look, I guess what we do here, there's no universal advice just for every single type of league. I mean, obviously you can garner, if we're really excited about a certain player, that's probably translatable in all formats. But I think anytime there's a player that's specifically good in one format, like we'll talk about Chandler Simpson, is obviously much better in a categories league, someone like that. I think we do a good job of at least pointing that out at the time. So with that, Chris, what types of hitter types, I guess, or, what category of hitters do you think see the biggest rise in a head-to-head points league, or the biggest fall based on at least the CBS scoring format?
Yeah, I think as a general rule, it's especially true of CBS. I think it's especially true of ESPN's. OBP matters more. And guys who get production outside of the typical 5 roto categories. So that is guys who walk a lot, guys who hit a lot of doubles but don't necessarily hit a lot of home runs, guys who don't strike out get a bonus there. So Jacob Wilson is going to be better in points league. Geraldo Perdomo is going to be better in points leagues. Luis Arraez is going to be better in points leagues. I'm sure there's more. Max Muncy is very good in both, but probably a better points league player. That one's a little complicated because he doesn't play every day. And that's the other thing, is that you can get away with. I'll use my O'Neal Cruz example. We had the argument last week about O'Neal Cruz. I think there's a substantial playing time risk there. That doesn't really matter as much in Roto because, if anything, if O'Neal Cruz gets benched against lefties, batting average is going up. He's not hitting 200 if he's playing every day against righties. He's probably still going to steal a bunch of bases. That kills his value in points leagues. I think O'Neal Cruz might not be worth drafting in a points league anyway. But the fact that there is real playing time risk there, or at least if you think, as I do, that there's real playing time risk, I think that takes him off the board entirely.
Yeah. Volume is
everything.
The most important thing in a points league. I mean, certainly it matters in Roto too, but percentages, the traditional 5x5 categories, 3 of the 10 categories are percentages. They're not totals. Everything that's rewarded in a head-to-head points league is a counting stat. It's just accumulation. Even more so than the hitting end, it manifests on the pitching end. With particularly since CBS standard scoring is 3 points per innings pitched. Those innings eaters, if they're actually good pitchers, it helps a lot, and pitching well also helps to accumulate innings. So you do want good pitchers, but it's less important that your pitchers are good than that they're just pitching, which is why streaming 2-start options is such a successful strategy in a points league, while in a Roto league or a categories league, it's much more likely to
totally backfire. A hitter who I think might exemplify the head-to-head points versus Roto dichotomy, at least last year, was Gleyber Torres, who was like the most boring Roto player possible. He had 16 homers, 79 runs, 74 RBI, 4 steals, hit 256. That is maybe above replacement level in runs and below replacement level in everything else for a 12-team league at least. In a points league, though, he walked 14% of the time. He only struck out 16% of the time. I guess Gleyber Torres was pretty close to a top 12 second baseman last year if he wasn't solidly
on a per game basis. I think it was like 2.8 fantasy points per game.
So
tied for 6th or 7th at the position.
That's a good example of it. The problem is a lot of guys who walk a lot also strike out a lot. Those two things tend to go hand in hand. But when you have someone like Geraldo Perdomo, who was, to be fair, a top 10 hitter in Roto, he was exceptional in points leagues as well because he walked more than he struck out. So that's what you're looking for.
Someone who loses value, I will just point out, on the very high end, and these players are still great in the format, but someone like Bobby Witt, he doesn't walk as much. He
Trey Turner.
He doesn't hit for as much power. Instead of being a top 3 pick, Bobby Witt might be, in the back half of the first round in a points league. Or somebody like Pete Crow Armstrong, who steals a lot of bases but doesn't have good plate discipline.
James Wood.
Ellie De La Cruz comes to mind there. Trevor Story. They all
Julio Rodriguez, too, always.
Julio Rodriguez.
Jazz Chisholm, much better in Roto.
The streakiness part of the game, although it's kind of hard to quantify. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. On the pitcher side of things, Scott, you mentioned a few times some of the scoring here, but 3 points per inning, so that's 1 point per out recorded, 3 points for a quality start, 7 for a win, 7 for a save, half a point for a pitcher strikeout, and then -1 for each of a walk, earned run, hit allowed, hit by pitch, and -5 for a loss. So you mentioned kind of these boring inning eater types are pitchers who gain value. Some names last year who were higher in points per game than you might think. Matthew Boyd, he was SP22. Jamison Tyone was SP23. Merrill Kelly, SP28. Noah Cameron was SP30. Andrew Abbott, SP31. Pitchers who are a little bit lower in this format as a result. Maybe they don't give you as much volume as on a per start basis. Freddie Peralta, as good as he was, all the wins, SP18 in points per game last year.
Relatively high whip. Not that many innings,
Gilbert was weird. I don't know if it was because of injury. They were kind of babying him on a per start basis, but SP39 last season. Dylan Cease, we know he was a disaster, but I mean, even when he's going great, he doesn't always go 6 innings. So just a name to keep that in mind with as well. But it's innings, quality starts, and wins just matter so much more in head-to-head points than strikeouts, which kind of feels like we're always chasing a little bit more in a roto.
Unless your league gives pitchers a full point per strikeout versus the CBS standard of half a point. Huge difference then. You really do want to emphasize the strikeout guys.
Yeah. Some names who ranked higher in quality starts last season who you might not realize: Merrill Kelly, Luis Castillo, Ranger Suarez, Mitch Keller, Matthew Boyd, Zach Littell, who remains a free agent, Brian Bayo, David Peterson, Jose Soriano, Zach Gallen, and Brady Singer. What about drafting starting pitchers in head-to-head points leagues? We talk about which ones can help you just from a macro level, but I feel like when I first started here back in 2020, like the assumption was that pitchers would go higher in drafts, in head-to-head point league drafts. And I kind of see both sides of it right now because higher end hitters score more than higher end pitchers. But as a result, there's less high end pitchers to choose from. So that creates a bit of, scarcity at the position. So, do you think that makes it more likely that you should get an ace on your team?
No.
Versus, I don't know how it used to be. It was just like people used to always draft pitching higher.
Yeah. Well, I mean, how it used to be is pitchers threw a lot more innings.
Yeah.
So that was part of it. The high end pitchers outscored the high end hitters. But even back then, I argued against it. I still thought going hitters early was the way to go in a points league. And I think it's become even more recognized that that's the case because of the way innings have dropped off, but also because I think people who've played in the format for a long time have come to realize that it's more forgiving for pitchers for the reasons we've already talked about. If you're able to accumulate innings, if you're able to just work deep into games consistently, no matter how good you are, you'll have value in this format. And you can stream, like if you go light on pitching and head-to-head points, you can stream 2-start options off the waiver wire and stick with the teams that actually invested in pitching, and they're obligated to start their start guy they invested heavily in. You can hang with them. You can hang with them by streaming. And so it's the difference in a roto league. I already mentioned you can't do the 2-start stream thing because they're going to wreck your ratios. But, if you have anyone in there who ends up not being a plus for ratios, you can fall behind in those categories quickly. So if you have a bust, if you draft a starting pitcher who turns out to be a bust in a roto league, and it takes obviously a few starts to know that, and he'll have done so much damage to that point that you can't recover from. Or at least it's really hard to recover from it. Well, in a points league, maybe you got an extra loss or two by starting that guy, but you eventually shed him or learn to sit him, and you can make up for it off the waiver wire pretty easily. They tend to be shallower head-to-head leagues than roto leagues too, so more fertile waiver wire to supplement your pitching staff that way. So I think I've gotten to the point. The conventional wisdom in fantasy was in roto leagues, you stock up on hitting early, and head-to-head points, you stock up on pitching early. I don't know that I'm in favor of stocking up on pitching early in either format, but I think it's actually less important in head-to-head points leagues that you get quality pitching than it is in roto or categories.
And to highlight this, I think a perfect example is Yoshinobu Yamamoto, who I assume is going to be at least a top 10 pitcher in every head-to-head points league. He was 12th in this format last season. But I think you also have to take into account this. Someone like Yamamoto, and this is becoming increasingly common across the sport. Maybe he had 1-2 start week, but probably not more than a couple all of last season, maybe a few. You compare him to pick one name at random, Zach Gallen. Zach Gallen did not have a good year, famously. He scored about 125 fewer points than Yoshinobu Yamamoto last season in CBS scoring formats. On a per start basis, the difference was about 4 points per game. That's not nothing, but when you think about that, you get a 2-start Zach Gallen, which probably happened. He had 33 starts last year. There are 27 weeks in a fantasy baseball season. 2 of them are shortened because of the schedule. So let's say 25 weeks. He probably had a 2-start week 8 to 10 times. That means like a third of the season, you're almost certainly starting a bad Zach Gallen ahead of Yoshinobu Yamamoto. That's significant. That's not to say Yamamoto's not better. I do think it's probably to say that he will not be worth what you're likely to pay for him this year, Yamamoto. But it's just to say in a points league, a really, really good pitcher just doesn't have as much value. You look at the days when guys were throwing 230 innings, the best pitchers in the league. They were starting with that 230-point baseline. Tarek Skubal threw 195 innings last season.
Well, 690-point baseline.
Well, no, but I'm just saying, like, with nothing else, just their innings, you're lopping off 30 to 40 innings from the best, 30 to 40 points per year from the best pitchers.
Well, no,
without
I'm
even
saying
taking
it's
into account
3 points per inning. So
that's right. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
90 to 120 points you're lopping off.
Even better point. Yes.
Yep.
So like that's just a huge, like, there were 2 pitchers who got to 600 innings or 600 points in a head-to-head points league last year. It was Garrett Crochet, who won 18 games and threw 205 innings, and it was Tarek Skubal, who was the best pitcher in baseball. It's just, it's a big difference than the way we used to play, to the point where streaming, I mean, 2-star pitchers are rare, but if you can get a couple in any given week, it gives you a big advantage.
Yeah, so the high-end pitchers previously, if we're talking just 5 to 10 years ago, they would have scored over 700 fantasy points, and we don't see anything close to that. Like, again, Crochet led with 637.5 last year. There were 3 hitters over 650 fantasy points. Hitters 650 last year, and there were only 2 pitchers over 600. So the high end, there's just not as much there from a pitching perspective. I was going to warn people about 2-star pitchers and chasing volume. Obviously, yes, you want volume in a points league. But Scott, as we talked about a lot of times throughout the course of the season, we were recommending a lot of the same guys week over week as 2-star pitchers because they would just keep getting pushed back. So while they might look like 2-star pitchers, I don't know. I don't know how viable that is anymore because of 6-man rotations or guys just being spaced out purposely the way that baseball is now. And I would almost rather go with, even an SP2 or an SP3 type that has like a decent matchup rather than just some low end streamer type who might have 2 stars. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's fair. And it's not just the 2-star streamer thing, though. It's how many pitchers end up mattering in head-to-head points versus Roto. I mean, that list you rattled off at the start, Jameson, Tyone, and who else?
I mean, even the example of Yoshinobu Yamamoto only outscoring Zach Gallen by 4 points per game. Like,
sure, even
that's
when
not
Gallen
nothing.
was terrible.
4 points is not nothing, but Yamamoto was one of the best pitchers in baseball. Zach Gallen was really bad, and the difference was 4 points per week, basically.
I'm just saying that is one more arrow in your quiver. If you go light at starting pitcher in a points league, is the 2-star possibility. Yes, you can. It's not as foolproof as it used to be, and you can go too far with it. But it's, when I say it's more forgiving, the format is more forgiving for pitching than categories. I'm talking about a lot more than that. And to also offer a word of warning, I remember we invited somebody on the podcast, a listener who played in a head-to-head points league for a long time, and he was singing the praises of Kyle Gibson in a points league. Oh, you got to go after Kyle Gibson, because Kyle Gibson, he would eat a lot of innings when he was going well and put up a lot of points. But when you're targeting pitchers in a points league, what makes a pitcher good, the way to evaluate pitchers, doesn't really change between the 2 formats. When you're predicting how good a pitcher is going to be moving forward, you still want him to miss bats. You still want him to have weak contact and all of that stuff. So I'm not saying that in this format you can just go and target a bunch of Jameson, Tyone, and Merrill Kelly types and be fine. You still should aim for the best pitcher you could possibly be. But I am saying there will be pitchers like Jameson, Tyone, and Merrill Kelly last year who end up being way more valuable, just because that's
They run hot on
the
Winlock
format
or-
allows for that kind of pitchers, that kind of pitcher to excel, even if it's not as predictable that any specific one of them will excel, if that makes sense.
By the way, I just want to add, just because I looked it up and it's ridiculous. In 2019, Justin Verlander scored 765 points in this format.
Yep.
And Garrett Cole scored 741. The top hitter that year was Alex Bregman with 657. And I picked 2019 because 2020 is the end of whatever pitching era we were in.
It's
There
the
was a
dividing line,
huge,
basically, yeah.
like that's when 200 innings became 180 innings and 225 became that's never happening.
Yeah, pretty much. Let's take our final break. When we return, a little bit more on head-to-head points, then we'll talk head-to-head category strategy right after this.
When you need your sports news all the time,
We've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you. When you need your sports in a snap, find it on CBS Sports HQ, streaming free anywhere you are.
Welcome back in Fantasy Baseball today. It's Strategy Week. We're continuing on with head-to-head points leagues right now, and we should also note that I guess this goes for either head-to-head points or categories. Typically, on CBS with a points league, on Yahoo with the categories, the lineups are shallower than usual. So what that allows you to do is take a little bit more risk, take on a little bit more risk throughout the draft or even throughout the season, just because the replacement value on the waiver wire is much better than it typically is in a deeper format. So, for example, while Byron Buxton's skill set might be better in a categories league, you get power and speed and everything, he might strike out a little bit too much. Instead of taking the risk on him in a 5 outfielder league where the replacement value might not be as good, I like taking a risk on him in a 3 outfielder league where the waiver wire is going to be plentiful and there's going to be a lot of serviceable hitters and outfielders, or even just names that you could stream on a weekly basis. So I just wanted to get that in there from a shallower point of view as well. You've probably heard us talk a lot about SPARPs in the past. Head-to-head points is the format where they matter the most. They are starting pitchers with a relief pitcher eligibility. It's a bit of a cheat code because you can put them in the RP spots and, again, chase more volume, try to get more starts in your lineup so you can earn quality starts and wins and things like that. Do you see yourself going as hard after SPARPs in this format this year compared to previous years, maybe versus someone like an established closer? Just because, to me, the SPARP list, not very good.
No.
Like, it's okay. There's some interesting names, but it's not great.
It's worth, there will be more
Yeah.
come spring training, but it's not a particularly interesting list of names this year for sure. So
A lot of times the best SPARPs emerge mid-season too.
Sure.
You don't even see them coming going in. So there have been great SPARPs in years past who, maybe they stepped into a starting role early on. And I remember Carlos Carrasco the year he broke through. He entered with relief pitcher eligibility next year and was going like in the 4th round because of it in a points league. But who was this? There was somebody like that last year too.
Grant Holmes.
No, somebody higher in I can't remember who it was.
Chris Bubich? No, someone high end.
No, I think it was Bubich. Yeah, because he was a reliever in 20.
Yeah, but we weren't drafting.
No,
him
he
that
wasn't
high
going
last
that
year.
high though. I can't remember who. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have derailed the podcast when I didn't know the name.
In the meantime, I will read off the SPARPs to know for this season. We have Ryan Nelson, Ian Seymour, Joey Cantillo, Cody Ponce, Braxton Ashcraft, Sean Newcomb, Anthony Kay, Brad Lord. Again, I don't know if all these names are going to matter, but those are the SPARPs. And maybe Troy Melton, Peyton Tolley, and Drew Anderson of the Tigers at some point.
Yeah, I mean, who of those is getting drafted at all? Not, at one point Ian Seymour looked like he'd have a rotation spot, but not anymore. Reed Detmers is kind of interesting. Did you mention him? Because he's not even starting pitcher eligible yet.
Yeah,
He's
he's
supposed
just
to be in
RP.
the rotation.
Right.
Oh, Clay Holmes.
I think it was even higher in than that.
No, but
I
he
may be
was-
thinking 2 years ago, though.
he
The
was
years kind of
getting-
blend together.
He was getting pushed up a lot, though. Like,
I think
around
a couple
pick
years
100
ago,
or something.
Cole Reagan's was
I
RP
think it was
eligible a
Cole
couple
Reagan's
years
a
ago.
couple. Yeah, I think that's it. I think that's it.
So
But I
looking-
think Clay Holmes was the top one last year.
Okay.
looking at the scoring from last season, the top 7 relievers in total points were all closers. 13 of the top 15 relievers in total points were closers. So again, it's just like there weren't as many good SPARPs as we're used to. So while I think you can kind of stream them in the right matchups, again, maybe try and chase some 2-star weeks. The way that this season is set up right now, there are not a lot of high-end SPARPs.
Ryan Nelson's the highest, right? You mentioned him.
I think Ryan Nelson's probably the best.
Yeah.
And like some of these guys are mildly like maybe Sean Newcomb could be interesting.
I like Braxton Ashcraft.
I like Braxton Ashcraft.
Braxton Ashcraft is pretty talented. Anthony
but he's
Kay.
not quite draftable yet.
Yeah.
Some SPARPs in Yahoo, by the way, because their eligibility is a little bit different. Chase Burns is a reliever, has RP eligibility in Yahoo. Ryan Nelson, same there. Sean Manaea, Braxton Ashcraft, mentioned him. Tyler Holton, no, he's just a reliever, so I'll take him.
I mean, even then, though, I think Chase Burns is still the only one in most 12-team leagues, so I think definitely. But
if we had that in CBS, we'd be pretty excited about that.
If Chase Burns was RP eligible, I think he'd be... Yeah. Is that a top 15 starting pitcher? I think we all have him pretty close to top 20 already, right?
Who's that?
Chase Burns?
Yeah. That was a good chance. Did you mention Cody Ponce? Not for Yahoo, but just in general.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, because he's interesting too, coming back from he was in Korea, right? South Korea.
That sounds right. Yeah. And the Blue Jays gave him a 3-year deal, so it's pretty decent commitment on their end. A couple other things here in head-to-head points leagues. I think an underrated aspect, this is more so just for any head-to-head leagues, is finding consistency because it's a weekly matchup. A weekly matchup within a very long baseball season, it is hard to measure consistency or quantify it on our end. It's not really a thing that we can do, except just anecdotally and remembering players that get off to slow starts or players that have terrible plate discipline and they just go through long stretches, like Ellie De La Cruz and Julio Rodriguez and Pete Crow Armstrong, Randy Rosarena, Cedon Rafaela. I guarantee you at multiple points throughout the season, we are going to get emails of people being very angry with those specific players because they will be slumping more than players of their caliber.
But I used to bang this drum on football, and I'll bang it here. I think people tend to look at that the wrong way. People only tend to think about the downside of quote-unquote inconsistent players. And for one thing, I'm not sure inconsistency has much carryover from one year to the next. For every player is inconsistent to a certain degree. I think the problem with guys like Pico or Armstrong is if they are not getting good results when they are putting the ball in play, they're doing nothing. He just doesn't have any other way to help you in fantasy because he doesn't walk. And that's just a problem in head-to-head points league. He's just not a very good head-to-head points league player because of that. But even if you could tell me for sure that, I don't know, who are two very similar players, Julio Rodriguez and Corbin Carroll's probably pretty close in a points league. Kyle Tucker. Even if you could tell me at the end of the season they will score the exact same number of points, but Kyle Tucker will be more consistent on a week-to-week basis than Julio Rodriguez, that doesn't necessarily make Kyle Tucker the better player in a head-to-head points format because you still need to win weeks. And so you can look at, the Julio Rodriguez only gave me 6 points this week. That killed me. Yeah, but there's going to be weeks where he gives you 50 points. And you're gonna have a much better chance of winning that week. That's not to say that the bad weeks don't matter. It's just so many people, I think, in fantasy, and this is way more true in football because people think week to week in football way more, but so many people tend to look at it and say, I lost my week because of that guy getting 0 points. Well, yeah, but if he has 36 points the next week, you got a really good chance of winning. That matters just as much, if not more. Like those high-end outcomes are super, super valuable. Especially because you're going to face weeks where you have to win. And if you happen to get that 36-point effort in a playoff game, that matters way more than anything else. So I think inconsistency is too often used against players. Volatility is bad, or volatility can be bad if you get the bad outcomes. But inconsistency, I don't think consistency should be even a tiebreaker. It's just a different way of getting to the same destination, you know?
I think it comes down to you as a fantasy player as well. And we talk about the block, Chris, with Blake Snell and Dylan Cease, where if you don't want to be part of the roller coaster ride,
Yes.
you have to know that about yourself as a fantasy player. So if you play in a points league and you know what, Ellie De La Cruz has had a few really bad months so far in his career, my guess is it's probably going to happen again. He could just improve and it goes away, but he's also going to have months where he's amazing. So consider that consider that when drafting yourself as a fantasy player. One last thing here that I have on head-to-head leagues is something that people that brought up more to me in recent years is stashing players. And we talk about stashing players all the time, but more so people just in head-to-head leagues being more focused on the playoffs and trying to set themselves up to have the optimal roster whenever that playoff time comes, if it's in August or September, whenever it might be. How much of that matters to you guys, like drafting and stashing players specifically in head-to-head leagues, or even picking them up throughout the course of the season, just setting yourself up to have the best roster possible for the playoff time later on in the season?
Yeah, I mean, I think just because even more than the head-to-head aspect, just because they're shallower leagues and you can always backfill off the waiver wire with startable players, even if they're not amazing, then the best use of your bench spot, your IL spots, is the most impactful players you can stash there, and potentially. It was an adjustment for me playing in NFBC leagues, 15-team roto, no IL spots. I had to emphasize those boring players more because I'm so used in head-to-head leagues. Like, the bench is no place for backups. The bench is where you stash future impact. The kind of players who are going to improve your team's bottom line the most once they're available. And, as long as you can fill your lineup out in the meantime, you should be fine. But, it gets trickier in head-to-head points leagues, particularly if you go light on pitching. So much of your bench, I feel like, needs to be pitchers. Yeah. That's why I think it's best, this approach of stashing upside is best served with IL spots in leagues that make those available.
I will also just add, in every roto league, finishing in sixth place sucks. It's terrible. You get nothing for it. That's like the worst thing you could do is finish in sixth place. In a head-to-head points league, if you're in sixth place in a league where 6 teams make the playoffs, but you're peaking in September, that's just as good as being in second, like third place, I guess. You'd rather be in first. You'd rather have the bye if you have a bye week, but like there's nothing wrong with being in sixth place if your team is peaking at that time. That can actually be a hugely advantageous spot to be in. You just got to get to sixth place. So that's a big distinction between head-to-head points and roto is roto, it doesn't really matter when your team peaks. If your team is bad in September, but you were awesome the first 5 months, still might win your league. If your team was awesome the first 5 months in a head-to-head points league and stinks in September, you might as well have missed the playoffs. So that's the one key distinction when you're talking about stashing players. And I can't think of any hitters worth stashing right now.
The only ones I wrote down were Ha-Sung Kim and Anthony Volpe, but I don't even know.
Yeah, those aren't that impactful.
Those guys are not going to matter in a head-to-head points league unless something really unexpected happens.
No way. Yeah.
But the pitcher side,
there's some names there.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
There always will be.
Zach Wheeler.
Garrett Cole
we think will not be ready for opening day. He still could be, but you're most likely stashing Wheeler. Obviously, Garrett Cole, it sounds like May or June. Carlos Rodon, maybe late April, early May. Jared Jones coming back for the Pirates at some point. Corbin Burns, and Justin Steele. Those are later in the season. We're probably talking like June, July, August, something like that.
Steele's going to basically be on the Spencer Strider because he didn't have Tommy John surgery. He had the internal brace, and he had it in April. So I think his timetable is going to be pretty close to what Spencer Strider's was last year. It's just we remember how Spencer Strider's season went, so I don't actually know if Justin Steele is going to matter.
Right. So, I mean, those are the names off the top of our head, but between now, February 1st or 2nd, when you're listening to this, and opening day, a lot more players are going to get hurt.
Yes.
So we will have an updated list of those as spring training goes along. We're kind of up against it here. I don't want to rush through categories. So tomorrow we'll do roto and head-to-head categories together. We'll talk daily lineup leagues as well. There was one other thing I just wanted to bring up with head-to-head leagues in general and how to set up the playoffs. This is a question we get a lot too. And I think it's preference, like it changes for everybody. Me personally, I like 6 of 12 teams making the playoffs. I like the 5 best records automatically get in. And then the 6th and final playoff spot is the highest point scorer who is not one of the 5 best records. So it kind of helps with someone who's just maybe had some unluckiness all season long and they've just faced the best team over and over, whatever it might be. So rewarding someone who has scored a lot of points throughout the course of the season. The top 2 teams get a bye, and then I like 2-week matchups in the playoffs, but you probably have to start that in like the 2nd or 3rd week of August to get everything done.
I can't tell you how many times I've missed the playoffs as one of the top 2 or 3 highest scorers.
I feel like it happens every year in our listener points league. So this will
obviously not every year, but like every year I miss the playoffs. That seems to be it seems to be that scenario where I should have made it points wise, but didn't have the win-loss record.
I'm going to set that up for this year in the listener league. It'll be the top 5 records and then the next points.
My biggest, the thing I harp on most here is I like 2-week playoff matchups, even though, during the season, 1-week schedule, usually, you get a lot fewer. I'm not even sure it's a lot fewer, but it's enough fewer upsets if you just extend the playoff week, the playoff matchup out to 2 weeks instead of 1, still allowing for people to change their lineups, so they don't have to go 2 whole weeks without making lineup changes, still allowing them to change it halfway through, or, if your league uses daily lineup changes, then that resolves that problem itself. But yeah, I think that that helps reduce frustration a lot for people when they feel like they just got a bad break 1 week, the week the playoffs started, and actually had the better team.
I'll also say I think starting playoffs earlier is always better. Just, I don't know, you can, call me names about it or whatever, but it's just natural. People lose interest when football starts. That's just a reality of the game. And so
not if you have the right league, Chris.
But sure. But I'm talking the reality of the world and avoiding as much overlap as possible for football, but also just like September is weird. It's less weird now than it used to be because rosters don't expand by quite as much, but you still have...
You get a lot of players that are shut down end of year, pitchers who get shut down, or guys
starts get skipped a lot more in September.
Hitters out of the lineup just because like their team isn't playing for anything. That happens all the time.
So that's I think September is just kind of a weirder time, and so having less, like, it's impossible to avoid entirely having your league decided in September, but having your entire playoffs run in September can lead to some funkiness that I think it's best to avoid.
I don't like it, Chris. I don't like it. I like getting my money's worth. I need all of the season to count.
I think it's also just like baseball season is really long.
It's the longest of the 4 major sports.
Yeah, like 27 weeks is a long.
Like 6 months of a regular
I just don't know. I'm sure there are some casual fantasy baseball players who are just biding their time till football season starts, but I think it's far less than it used to be. I think the game's kind of weeded those casuals out to a large extent.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. All right, we're going to wrap there. Again, tomorrow we'll have roto and head-to-head categories. We'll talk some daily lineup strategy for that as well. For Scott and Chris, I am Frank. Thanks as always for tuning into Fantasy Baseball today. Please make sure to follow and leave a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify, and we will be back again tomorrow. Bye-bye.